I know your name, Kray. And I think to myself, George, I think, these boys are special. These boys are a new kind. You've got it. You've got it. And I can see it. And you've got to learn how to use it. Now there's people out there, lots of people, who don't like to be hurt. Not them, or their property. Now these people who don't like to be hurt, pay people not to hurt. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? Of course you do. When you boys get out of here, you keep your eyes wide open. Watch out for the people who don't want to be hurt. 'Cause you scare the shit out of me, boys. Wonderful.
Ronnie and Reggie Kray, the twins who became the undisputed bosses of East End gangland. Were they born villains, or did fate shape them for the role?
A lot of people stole things because they were hungry. They had no other means to live. I know people say, oh, we other people got out the East End and they made it. It's not like that for everybody. I mean, some people are more brainy than others. They have more chances. And in your life, you mean to go one way and you're pulled another. It's not the individual's fault all the time.
The Krays had got something about them that was almost indefinable. To say that they were personalities is wrong because they projected an aura of evil, of power. They would resort to violence at the slightest provocation to establish a reputation. And this they did very, very successfully, so that not only foreigners and people that intruded into the East End, but members of their own gang respected them because of that violence.
But if the Krays were so evil, why did the community in which they lived put up with them for so long? In London's poorer quarters, the line between right and wrong had long been blurred. Many of life's simple pleasures were outlawed by the state. Late-night drinking, card and dice games, and off-course betting.
I mean, I lived in a place called South Grove Buildings. It was a big old block of flats. There was at least 3 bookmakers in there used to take the bets. And they all got a living. And all of a sudden they might say to my dad, Barney, my dad's name, Barney, got to nick you today. So at B's turn to get nicked, to take him to court. Illegal bookmaking, street bookmaking, might get found a fiver.
The East End contained many illegal drinking and gambling clubs, which were frequently targeted by the police.
People were in there playing cards, and then the police would raid it. They'd take them to the police station, have to appear in court next morning, get fined 10 shillings, 5, whatever it was in them days. And that's where the people thought, what are we doing wrong? All we're doing is playing cards. We're not doing anything wrong. And they're arresting us, and so they lost their respect for them.
Down the East End, the police were sort of natural enemies in some extent, and people didn't come running in with information unless it was to their benefit.
Because there was so little respect for the law itself, many East Enders were unwilling to call on the police to investigate even serious crimes.
They're a community of their own. They've lived hard, they've had a hard time, but it was their ethics and a code of honour that you didn't normally grasp.
But this code of honour exposed the community to exploitation by professional criminals who turned it to their own advantage. In the East End, the law that was enforced was often the law of the Kray twins, Ronnie and Reggie.
The twins ran that part of London like an iron rod. There was nothing that went on in that East End that they didn't know about. If there was a wrongdoing, get off the manor, because they would come down on you like a ton of bricks.
Well, You know, they keep saying about protection. They was running the protection racket. It wasn't actually like it sounds. They would go into a place and say, if you don't give me we'll look after you. If you don't pay this, you'll be in trouble and all that. The people actually used to go to them and want them to look after it and let it be known that they was looking after a place. They wasn't actually, I suppose it is a protection racket in a way, but it was worked on a different basis. People used to go to them and ask them to look after them.
There were lots of people that walking into pubs that were taking a lot of money in those days. Remember, we were talking about the early 60s, when live music and good entertainment was throughout the East End, throughout every part of London. And protection money was being asked for. And therefore, rather than pay 3, 4, 5, 10 bullies, it's better to go and ask Ronnie and Reggie Kray, could you just appear for 10 minutes or have 1 or 2 drinks in our pub on a Saturday night? Once it was known as a pub that the Krays used, then that publican didn't have any more trouble.
They only went into people that were breaking the law. You know, like if you had a publican who was having a laugh to timer, then they could go into him. Or if they had a club where they were doing illegal gambling, dice, spieling or something like that, they would go into them. They want their whack. But no way could they ever go into straight people. Because first, if they come into you, the first thing you do is pick the phone up, give it to the police. And that was it. So the only people they could intimidate were people that couldn't phone the police.
In the 1960s, Britain's most infamous gangsters played host to movie stars, politicians, and boxing champions. Behind this glamorous facade, Ronnie and Reggie Kray conducted a ruthless reign of terror. The twins' criminal organization was known as The Firm, and their most trusted henchman was Albert Donahue.
I was known as Reggie's man. Scotch Ian Barry was known as Ronnie's man. The twins themselves would never go on an organised robbery or a blagging or anything like that. They considered that the work of jailbirds, in their own words. But as soon as they heard of somebody who had it off, their first concern was, do they know anyone on the team? If they do, then they would go in for their whack, as it was known, their share. If he says, I'm not going to give you any money, you don't jump all over him. You come back and you say he's not going to pay. Now, that would be a different mission. Go and get 3 or 4 guys and go and sit on his house or a pub or a club where he drinks and give him a talking to. Send him to the hospital for a couple of days and then talk to him again. That was everyday firm work, you know.
Leeching off the local villains was just one of the financial pillars on which the Krays empire was built. Another was protection.
I was taken out with Ronnie and Big Tommy Brown. We took a taxi and we toured the West End, all the different clubs where they were getting paid off. And I was introduced to where they used to pay the money. And they were told that I would be collecting from now on. And that was it. That became my Friday job. I used to call it the milk round. You know, just run around the West End, collect all their dough, and then all around the East End, little spielers and that. I mean, there was clubs I used to go, like Benny the cab drivers in Commercial Road, £10 a week. A tenner, just to let him carry on running his spieler. 25 quid a week, the Green Dragon. Some of the West End clubs, 40s and 50s.
Before he was recruited to the Krays firm and became their chief collector, Donahue was forced to undergo a bizarre initiation ceremony.
They decided that he would fit nicely into their organisation, but in order to test him, first of all, he was shot in the foot. And the test then was, of course, would he go to the police, or would he would there be an act of retaliation against the Krays or some of their gang? But instead of this, the man went home and nursed himself, and eventually then was recruited into their firm and became one of their able lieutenants, and a very trusted one.
But I said to Reggie once, if this happened, Donahue will never forget it. He'll be an enemy. He'll work for you, but he'll always be an enemy. He said, no, I don't think so. He's all right now, he goes. So he knows it's one of them things.
The Kray twins never expected betrayal. After all, they bought the loyalty of local villains by supporting the Aways, fellow criminals locked up in jail.
Every now and again, probably once a fortnight, we had a number of pubs we would use. As the place filled up, did it look promising? If there was a few obviously rich guys there, they would say, do the Aways list. So now you would go around with a piece of paper and say, collecting for the Aways. And get whatever you got. And then they'd say, well, who's away? Well, Harry's doing 2. His missus has got 2 kids. Right, send them round 25 quid. Like that. Again, this reflected on the twins, because when you went round, you would say, the boys sent you around this, help out with the electric or the gas or whatever. Oh, they lovely boys. You still hear that today, lovely boys. Yeah. They just nipped it off other people, but they got the reflected glory. Yeah.
Behind the mask of public relations, the firm's real strength lay in professional violence.
But normally, somebody's got to insult or whack you or something for you to react with violence, normally. But you can get to a stage where you do it purely as a way of life. That's professional violence. Lay the man down, break his leg. You've never met him before. You're not angry with him. He hasn't done you any bad turn. He's just stopping the business. But with Ronnie, it was different. It was a bit more weird, if you like, because other people's violence, if he heard about it, he would get them to sit down and give it to him detail by detail. He got something out of it. He was definitely Freddy Krueger type person. I mean, Ronnie would smash somebody. He would literally smash them, with whatever he had in his hand. Doesn't matter if it was a hammer, a bayonet, or an axe or whatever. He would just slice somebody for the wrong word and enjoy it and say, hold that, and walk away.
Ronnie once punished a man who had simply upset a friend of the Krays.
And so they dragged this poor little guy out of bed at 2 in the morning, took him down to a club that they then owned called Esmeralda's Barn, tied him to a chair, and Ronnie had then heated a sharpening steel in the gas burner of the cooker, and then put it across this man's forehead and across his face, and burned him very badly.
Ronnie once told me that they had a cousin who was, say, 2 or 3 years older than them, and when they were kids, and they used to play in the bomb sites all over the place, you would make little dens, what you call dens, little camps. And this older cousin would torture them. Torture these 2 boys, the twins. And whether that had any effect on them, well, I suppose it must have done. But they never actually told the parents about it. But obviously it's something that stuck with Ronnie for him to tell me about it. Ronnie didn't hide the fact that he was a homosexual. No. He liked young boys, young men. There were writers, there were the politicians, like the famous ones like Boothby, Dryburgh, and a few others. Supposing Ronnie might fancy a showbiz, so he used to put what they call the W out, the warrant. Anybody can get in back to the twins would get a payment, some sort of cash. We were all up the West End somewhere one night in this well-known Chinese place, and we saw this guy sitting on his own, obviously to be noticed, And Ronnie spotted him and said, "Who's that?" And somebody said, "That's Cliff Richards, an up-and-coming star, you know." And, I'd like to meet him, you know. Goes straight away as a W out of him. If anyone can get him in to a meet, that's all he's got to do. You know, can't guarantee that he'll fancy Ronnie. It would have been a bad thing if he ever had happened, you know, I think so. I mean, old Cliff, I don't particularly like his singing and all that, but he don't seem a bad guy. I wouldn't hate to see him involved with that sort of person.
By the early 1960s, the Kray twins' charisma and willingness to use the most extreme violence had brought the whole of London's East End within their grasp. Now the undisputed bosses of their own manor, they called a gangland summit.
There was a sort of, I'm not talking about a boardroom meeting, but there was a meeting between Freddie Foreman's firm, South London, the Nashes, North London, Twins East, and Richardson's, also South London. And we get together and cut London up. And all that don't interfere with each other's business. But Richardson's were getting too much money. They said, "We don't need you." Just one bit of business, they were getting £1,000 a week out of the London Airport car park. That was just one bit. This made Ronnie jealous because he couldn't match that. So all he wanted to do was take it over, smash them. So the war was declared, and we were given a name each of their firm. We were told where they lived, what pubs and clubs they used, what place of business they used, and we were given access to a gun. As soon as Ronnie went into one of his depressions, got something upset him, he would say, "That's it, go." And we would have all, well, now it's make or break.
It's just an indication of how power crazy they were, that they would take such steps as these to exterminate members of an opposing gang, and you can imagine the kind of holocaust it would have generated, because this would have been gang warfare on a scale that we'd never known before.
Spoiling for a gangland showdown, Ronnie was to be disappointed. Before he could send the troops to war, a bloody skirmish broke out over territorial protection rights at a Catford gambling club. Eddie Richardson and his supporters were shot and wounded. Kray associate Dickie Hart was killed. The police moved in and netted almost the entire South London gang, with the exception of Richardson hardman George Cornell.
The next thing we heard, we were sitting in the pub in Bethnal Green. Somebody, one of the spies, came in and said, "Cornell was sitting round the beggars, drinking." Now, Cornell was running from the old bill, so he was away from South London, drinking in the East End. When Ronnie got the information that Cornell was actually sitting practically round the corner in the Blind Beggar, he took Scotch Ian, who's his backup man, and Scotch Jack as a driver. Ronnie and Ian went in. They had a shooter each. Ian let one go in the ceiling, just to get people's heads down. And then Ronnie just stunned Cornell in the head.
Try as they might, the police were unable to find a single witness who would say what had happened in that bar. Ronnie's lust for violence was beyond control. This increased the pressure on Reggie. His marriage to childhood sweetheart Frances Shea was cracking under the strain of her husband's criminal lifestyle.
Well, she would smile, but, I mean, what's a smile, you know? You can sit in a dentist's chair and open your mouth, it looks like you're smiling, but there was a lot of glamour to it, I suppose, and it must have looked nice at the time, but when she actually saw how the whole thing was made up, and Ronnie screaming in the background and going into his troughs, she must have got sick of, probably frightened of it as well. See, because in the early days they were both homosexual, and then Reggie sort of came away from it. He has asked me how you actually touch a woman to make her excited, liven her up. He didn't know where you touched her, how you touched her, or what. And honestly, I don't think he knew where to put it while he was married. The problem was an ordinary person would have gone through a divorce and met someone else. Now, she couldn't do that. If you can imagine some handsome young chap falling for Kray, and Reggie heard about it, he's going to have his legs cut off. So she could never have another life, sort of thing.
Just 2 years after her celebrity-style wedding, Franny Kray killed herself with an overdose of sleeping tablets.
I've never known anyone in my life to idolise someone like her. He really did idolise her. And when she died, it slaughtered Reggie. He was taking tranquilizers, he was drinking, and he was never in the right frame of mind for a long, long time. It just crucified him.
Distraught with grief, Reggie Kray was unable to help Ronnie in his desperate struggle with madness.
If you went to the house, you would see him sitting in his armchair, and he'd be like this. He'd be chain smoking, and he'd be popping these heavy pills, and scowling. He used to scowl a lot. And if somebody said something, it'd be like a general conversation going on. And if he wanted to listen to one particular person, he'd shut up, you. And now you knew it was time to shut up. See, with Ronnie, you could say to him one day, time to go down the caravan or something, you look like you're putting on a bit of weight. That would be okay. You could say exactly the same thing tomorrow. And you would have to fight for your life.
Further evidence of Ronnie's deteriorating condition was the extraordinary scheme to spring his old friend, Mad Axeman Frank Mitchell, from Dartmoor jail in the absurd hope that it would force the Home Office to grant him an early release. In fact, it was hardly an escape at all. Mitchell simply walked away from a moorland work party and was picked up in a car by Donahue.
We were actually in Fulham when he came on the news that he'd been reported missing. Anyway, he ran up in a flat over in Barking, and he started performing. You imagine, if all the psychiatrists and screws and whatever can't control this guy, what chance has the twins got? We got him a girl, hostess out one of the clubs, keep him quiet. That worked for a couple of weeks.
But it soon became clear that Frank Mitchell was more trouble alive than dead.
They wanted him to give himself up and go back to prison. But of course, it was too late then. Mitchell had enjoyed this comfort, relative comfort. He'd enjoyed the pleasures of this young girl, and so he said, no, I'm not going back. And then he became an encumbrance. And so then it was decided that they'd got to do something very positive about him. They told Mitchell that he was going to another house in Kent.
It has never been proved who was behind the events that unfolded next.
Pack up, get him out of the flat. Take him round the corner. The guy stood on the pavement, opened the back of this old Thames-type van. I get in, there's two guys sitting on a wheel casing on the left. The wheel casing on the right is empty, so Frank got in first. I went to sit beside him. They said, so you go up the front and tell the driver how to get back to the tunnel. And I'm saying to the driver like a plum, I'm saying just go down, do a right and you're back on Barking Road. In the meantime, the guy shut the back doors. He's come round to where he's going to sit in the passenger door. Gets in. The van is running now. He gets in. As he slams the passenger door, I later found out that was the signal. I'm still leaning like an idiot talking to the driver. Bow, bow, bow. The guns start off behind me. And they just kept popping the man. And he came off the casing onto his knees and then he fell back. And these bullets were going all over him. Then he sort of went still. And one of the guys leaned over and put 3 shots in around the heart. You could see his shirt jumping. And then, now we're moving. We've done the first right. We're going up. We've got to do the next right. All of a sudden, there's a groan. So the guy said, he ain't dead. Give him another one. I'm empty. Now, I started thinking, I've got to go as well here. I'm piggy in the middle. Yeah. I was pleased to hear one guy's empty. Anyway, the other guy goes, puts the gun behind his ear and pop. That's the last shot that was fired. Now I'm thinking, the next thing I can do is dive in this cab amongst these two and just start kicking and punching till I can get out. I'm firmly convinced I'm going to die. Anyway, we now come back up to the old Barking Road. So I said, right, all you got to do, drop me off here. Hopefully. So the back door was open, I got out. And I started walking away. Still waiting for one in the back of the nut as I was walking away. But when I heard the van pull off, that was it, I was pleased.
They directed their violence inwards against members of their own gang. And in fact, once Mitchell was gone, one of the people that had been protecting Mitchell, one of the guards said to me in subsequent statements, you never knew who was going to be the next.
We even sort of half discussed popping them off ourselves.
How would you have gone about killing them?
We'll separate them first. Ronnie was wide open, because if he sat in the car, he would have to sit in the passenger seat. So you got the driver, Ronnie, and a couple of carefully selected people sitting in the back, taken through Blackwall Tunnel or Rotherhithe, and bang, it's finished. Really frightened Charlie. He wouldn't have to know. He might suspect, but he wouldn't have to. He'd probably, if he made a move, he would have had to go. You know, I mean, if you're into killing Ronnie and Reggie, you're not going to spend any sleepless nights over Charlie. You know?
Charlie Kray knew nothing of any schemes to kill his brothers, but he could sense that the firm was disintegrating, and he could smell betrayal in the air.
And in this pub this night, I just sit in one of them moods, and I said, do you know what's going to happen, Reggie? We're all going to be arrested, and all these animals here, all these people, will be in the dock against you. And I'm not going to have to stand in the dock and take something that I've nothing to do with over all this. And Ronnie turned around and said, oh, you're not being very nice, you're being disloyal. I said, no, I'm not. I know who they are, and you'll find out that. And I was right, it happened.
The police were now investigating the Krays' involvement in at least 3 murders. At last they felt they had the evidence needed to mop up the firm. But Donahue escaped the net.
And I didn't know anything had happened till I get in the lift, go up to I forget what floor they were on. I walk along and I see there's 2 coppers outside their flat. Even that wouldn't normally worry me too much. I see their front doors standing up against the wall. And I thought, oh yeah. And one of these coppers said, who are you? I said, my name is Donahue. I've got a cab firm in Bow. And I have a running account with Mr. Kray. And I come once a week to collect. Anyway, he very politely tells me I won't collect that particular week and piss off. So I did. And I was gone. And I went all over the place. Wound up in Bethnal Green. 3 weeks later, the squad came in. And that was it. Wiped up. Nicked.
Locked in jail, Donahue seemed the least likely member of the firm to break the criminal code and turn against the Krays.
Anyway, I go up for the solicitor's visit, it's called. I walk in the room, there's the twins and Charlie Kray and old Manny Freedy sitting down. There's an empty chair for me. So we're all sitting down. So they say to me, what do you reckon? I said, well, this is what I've made, notes I've made. Reggie takes the notes, reads them, and just rips them up. When he sees this, Freedy, he gets up, he says, I'll go and get another chair. Before, we're all sitting down. He just wanted to be out of the room so they don't hear. Well, he says, don't bother with notes, Albert. He said, what we're going to do, Scotch Jack is going to hold his hands up or Cornell. Young Ronnie's going to hold his hands up for Jack Yak, and we want you to hold your hands up for Mitchell. And we'll take all the violence and frauds. What a wonderful chap. So I looked at him, and I said, no. And, well, the temperature went down in that room about 10 degrees straight away, and he just staring at me. So that was it. I am now off the firm. Freedy comes back, smells it, and he said, my boy, just because you're not a Kray doesn't mean you won't get the same treatment. I said, yeah. Finished.
Donahue trusted his instincts. He pleaded guilty to a lesser offence of being an accessory to murder and was sent to prison for 2 years.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please join our Facebook group. It's called Krays Crime Lords of London. We're a friendly, moderated group with over 1,000 Kray and other celebrated gangster videos available for view. There's also thousands of images in the photos sections. The link for the group is in the YouTube description section. I hope we see